We assembled in Elsenborn, and then we moved up into the Germeter area with the 28th Infantry Division. And the Germeter-Hürtgen Road was our line of departure for the attack. And the attack went very well initially, and then it turned into a disaster because of the observation from Bergsten Ridge, where they could see every move that we made. Our infantry, that's the 3rd Battalion of the 112th, 1st and 3rd Battalion of the 112th, had negotiated the trail, the Call River, and up into Komerscheid. The poor devils were so tired they didn't know what they were doing. They had extra loads of ammunition and food, and they were wearing wool overcoats that were soaked with water, and so they were totally exhausted and in an impossible situation. And we then got the order to move up there and give them some support because there was German armor coming into the area. Our combat engineers from the United States Army had gone down the Call Trail with their minesweepers, and they maintained that they had removed all of the teller mines. So I proceeded to lead my tanks down the trail, and as I arrived at that outcropping of rock where the trail is especially narrow, I struck a mine and it blew off the right track of my tank. And I effectively blocked the entire trail. And that trail had been designated as the main supply route for an entire division. And so this was a disaster in the making. We couldn't have enough room to repair the track on my tank, so my platoon sergeant, a man named Sergeant Anthony Spooner, a very brilliant young man, devised a system of winching the rest of my platoon, there were 4 tanks left now, around my disabled tank. And when he accomplished the first tank, since it had the same radio capability that I had, I took his tank and I proceeded then down the trail. I told the sergeant, okay, you bring the rest of the platoon along. Well, they got around the obstacle, and then they began to fall off the edge of the precipice and throwing their tracks and having imaginable problems. So it's quite dark now. It's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I have a flashlight with a blackout lens on it, and I'm walking down the Call Trail. My tank's following me like my pet dog, you know. And I cross the bridge and negotiate the switchbacks on the Komerscheid side. And just as the daylight is breaking, I come into Komerscheid and I report to the infantry commander. And he says, there's a tank up there, I want you to go get it. And so I said, yes, sir. And I moved out and I engaged that tank and managed to destroy it. And I was the only tank that was there for a full 24 hours. And finally my platoon sergeant was able to bring 2 more of my tanks up. And then a day later, they brought up 7 of the tank destroyers. The tank destroyer has a 90mm gun and is capable of destroying a Mark V Panther, whereas my puny little 75, you know, if I'm lucky, I might damage his track so he can't move, but I can't destroy him. So we were hoping that we were going to get some effective fire from the tank destroyers. Well, of course, we were still under artillery fire, and I read or heard at one time that the fire from the German artillery was so intense that there were at least 30 rounds per minute falling into the Komerscheid area. And as I say, our infantry was so exhausted, and they were too tired even to dig a slit trench. Rocky soil, they have a tiny little shovel, and so they're quite exposed. And it is very devastating for me to see our troops being treated in that way. That's not the correct way, but this is war, you know. So eventually we got a total of 8 M4 Sherman tanks there and 7 tank destroyers. And we engaged in combat for 3 or 4 days, and we were on the losing end. We were outnumbered and outgunned and every other thing. Eventually we were down to 1 tank and 1 tank destroyer, and our infantry had been decimated, and eventually our 5th Corps realized that there was no way that we were going to retake Schmidt. And so they ordered that we evacuate, I think, on the night of the 8th day of November. And so it had begun to rain and snow, pitch dark, artillery into the woods, and our colonel was leading us out, and he fell down a cliff during the darkness, and that broke the column of people evacuating. And so we're like a group of quail, all scattered out, finding our way through this woods, strange. But we could see the fires from Vosnak, and so we knew which direction to go. And I think shortly before midnight we arrived in the Vosnak area, where we were met by our friendly troops, and we were taken to a warming tent and given some food, and c'est la guerre.